Hello and welcome to the premiere of In Conclusion. I'm Keishan Haynes. Before we get started, let's explain what this show is all about. It isn't intended to be a regular week in review show. What we hope to do is show you not just what we in the media covered over the past week, but why and how well. You, the viewers, are some of our loudest critics and champions. What we report is largely based on what you tell us you want. But I'll let you in on a secret. No one criticizes the media more than the media. So here we are. Each week, we're going to bring together a panel of the industry's harshest critics for a peer review of the week's top stories. What we did right, what we did wrong, and what we could do better. We're turning the cameras and microphones on ourselves and asking the tough questions. We want this discussion to be as honest and frank as possible. So everyone from all media houses, no matter the medium, television, radio, print, or online, to join the discussion. So why is this important? Well, we want to make sure that we continue improving on our craft so that you get the best and most accurate coverage possible. We also felt that this discussion was important because it's, of course, election season, the silly season, if you will. And it's expected that the attacks on the media in this election especially will be more frequent and more harsh than ever before. Take, for instance, November last year, the Sunshine newspaper published a list of journalists and media personalities whom they deemed to be the PP election team for 2015. Several of the names they listed you may know, such as CNC3's Hema Ramkissoon, CNMG's Paul Richards, and columnist and I-95.5 commentator Dr. Sheila Rampersad. Now, she's the only person who came out and demanded an apology from the Jack Warner run paper, and she got one, mainly because they meant political commentator Indira Rampersad and not Sheila. But in a country where media personnel are always being accused of belonging to one political party or another, or even sometimes both, do we ignore the accusations or do we come out and clarify our positions? And these are the type of questions that we hope to address on this show. But we'll address that particular question on a later showing. And of course, we always want to hear from you, because we do this for you, the public, and it's your feedback which fuels the program. So tweet us at TV6TNT using the hashtag InConclusion, or tweet to me at Keishan Haynes. Share your thoughts with us. So we're going to take a break, and when we return, a review of the week from Saturday the 21st to Friday the 27th of February. Stay with us. Welcome back. So let's take a look at our week in news. We got away from the wine and jam reporting of last week, making room for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to visit and sign several energy agreements with the country. Maduro even agreed to repay the debt owed to Caribbean Airlines. Meanwhile, Venezuelan protesters here were free to oppose his arrival, but back in Venezuela, a high school student was killed on Tuesday when he got caught between protesters and the National Police in San Cristobal. But of course, our journalists were barred from asking him any questions about this or anything at all about his questionable human rights record. And speaking of questionable, somehow kerosene got into our drinking water at the Caroni Water Treatment Plant, shutting off water for a large portion of the country, closing schools and prompting questions of just how safe our utility companies are. The EMA and the WASA says it's now safe to drink, but there are questions about how it got there in the first place and how come it wasn't picked up in the early stages. But we started off the week in news with the murder of Dana Sitahal, the state of the investigation. It seemed that there might finally be a breakthrough. This was a story by TV6's Mark Basant on Saturday the 21st.
TV6 News obtained reliable information from well-placed security sources that investigators are eagerly awaiting directives from the Director of Public Prosecutions before they move to charge at least 5 known suspects in the killing. Only this week, Acting Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams had told the media that once DCP for Operations Harold Phillip got directives from the DPP, the police would be moving in a particular direction. Sources told TV6 News that at least 2 of the suspects are already in jail on charges of murder and conspiracy to murder for an unrelated matter. Intelligence sources say one of the incarcerated men, considered a hitman for hire, was one of the main triggermen in Sitahal's killing and originally resided in the Komoto area.
Now, of course, this wasn't only reported by TV6. It was carried in the Newsday and the Express. On Sunday the 22nd, Acting Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams described the reports as irresponsible. Here's more of what he said, and here's how we responded.
is still not in police custody, but they have intensified their search for him following information they received from informants, some of whom are incarcerated. The Commissioner of Police had said many months ago that they did seek foreign help in the Dana Sital investigation. However, the Commissioner lashed out against a particular media house, not TV6, saying the TTPS considers it extremely irresponsible the naming of any officer or individual from any agency or organization who may or may not be assisted with the investigation. The Newsday in its Sunday report had indicated that FBI agent Patrick Farris was helping local investigators. Stephen Weeks, the public affairs officer of the U.S. Embassy, told TV6 News in a brief interview that it was an open police investigation and he would not comment on whether or not the FBI was assisting the local authorities. However, several months ago, former Minister of National Security Gary Griffith had alluded to the government seeking help from the FBI. Commissioner Williams, in his news release, went on to say he is mindful of the legitimate public interest attending the investigation and in regard urges restraint in any form of media reporting or commentary and calls for an absence of speculation which could possibly hamper the investigation. Even after Williams had made statements earlier this week that DCP Harold Phillip would be moving towards the DPP soon, he indicated in his release, the reports are inconsistent with the progress of the investigation thus far and manifests obvious distortions with material facts of the case. Last year, when former live sport coordinator Raji Ali was picked up by police for questioning about Dana Sital's murder and later released, Commissioner Williams denied that he had been picked up and questioned. However, several weeks later, in an interview with Express journalist Asha Javid, Raji Ali admitted that the police had picked him up for questioning in connection with Sital's murder.
So was the reporting there really irresponsible? If we have the information, should we in the media withhold it until an actual arrest is made? Or should we light a fire under the police to get them going with the investigation and give us the information? It's been almost a year since Dana Sital has been murdered and still no one has been charged or arrested. It's approaching 2 years since Emailgate broke. So does the public's right to know take precedence over the police's right to conduct an investigation in peace? Well, on one hand, it's really frustrating when you ask the Commissioner of Police questions about the investigations and you get responses like this.
The Express newspaper reported that a police file has gone missing. That file is on the investigation into documents being removed from the Port of Spain High Court and ending up in a private attorney's office. We asked Mr. Williams about this, but his response had nothing to do with what we asked.
A file going missing regarding the documents that came from the High Court ended up in a private lawyer's office. Any updates on that investigation?
Ladies and gentlemen, the work that we are doing here in this community is to ensure that the future of Trinidad and Tobago is guaranteed.
Regarding the witness tampering investigation, any update on that as either?
Besser Street needs the media support.
So to talk more about the issue of breaking the story versus holding your hand, we have a panel of crime reporters. We have CNews' broadcast journalist Peter Christopher, two reporters from the Trinidad Express, Jassy Gonzalez and Alexander Bruzel. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. I'm going to let Peter join the conversation first since you're the guest. So let's talk about this. If you have information, we in the media, if we have information, at what point do we say this is more important than the police's right to hold on to it?
Well, it depends on, you know, in the case of Dana Sital, it's a case that the public, as the Commissioner himself admitted, is a case that the public has great interest in. So I would say, with the information that was divulged in the Express story, I wouldn't say that I would not have kept it back. I would have probably done the story. However, what I would say is that there were things in that story that I probably would have phrased differently or left out, because I could see that there were things that perhaps may have, you know, caused complications to the investigators. I even, when the story came out, I sent a copy to one of the relatives of Ms. Sital, and the response wasn't so much that, oh, it's relief that there's something happening, but more that, you know, perhaps they are giving the criminals the heads up as to how to defend themselves.
I'll let you weigh in on that, Alex. Do you agree with that, that maybe this investigation might have been hampered in some way by our journalists?
To Personally, I believe that there needs to be information given to the public. I personally believe that whatever information has is that public interest, as the commissioner said in the release as well. He's mindful of that public interest. But if the information can be harmful to investigations, yes, to an extent. There's certain bits of information regarding that investigation that should not be released. And as any crime reporter will be able to tell you, there are just certain key bits. If the officers are looking for a person in an area, if they're looking for a particular item, you don't want to release too much because it can affect what results the police would get from their work.
But Jassy, you've been around longer than everybody here on
Yes.
this panel. So does this differ through country? Recently, you would have seen that Jihadi John would have been identified. So does this matter depending on what country you're in? Some would look at when the Boston Marathon happened. Before they had a suspect, they put a name out and they put pictures out. Why don't we do that here in Trinidad? Is that something that we should be doing?
Well, I mean, about the entire issue, it will never be black and white. It will always be affected. It will always be a place of a gray area, so to speak, when it comes to our handling of the information and whatnot. In Trinidad and Tobago, we do enjoy a tradition of media freedom. I wouldn't say unprecedented in other parts of the world, but I mean, given the fact that we still are a third world country, our media is pretty free to do what we can. That being said, sensitive information, yes. We are here to manage the flow of information. But the police or law enforcement needs to meet us halfway.
Well, that was my next thing. Have they been meeting us halfway? Have they been giving us the information that we need? You would have had that soundbite from the commissioner where we asked him questions about the state of an investigation, and he would have just blown off the reporter.
Well, yes, I mean, he has his thing to do. He has his role to fulfill, so to speak. But at the end of the day, respect our role as well, Mr. Commissioner. We will give you the opportunity to reply, but at least give us a reply at the end of the day. We wouldn't show up on assignment because we simply love being there. We have a job to do.
I want to talk about the issue of sources and using anonymous sources. Peter, the rule that I know is using two sources. Now, when you have a police investigation, there may not be two police officers who know the same thing. So how do we treat with that? And I actually throw this to everybody, but I'll start with Peter.
Well, again, you have to use your own judgment. You know, you have to decide which source do you trust. And even in the case of anonymous sources, sometimes when you name a source, you put them at risk. So you have to use your own judgment and make sure that you're not putting someone in danger or you're not compromising something.
So somebody, not just danger, but somebody's job as well.
Yes.
Because this is not information that should be public.
Yeah, so you have to be very careful. It's kind of a tightrope that we walk every day. It's something that crime reporters have to, figure out which source do I really, is this source really using, is he using me or is he giving me real information? That's a constant struggle we have.
Alex, how do you treat with a situation like that? When you're worrying about if a source is trustworthy, whether or not you roll with this, and whether or not you think the public will believe that this source is trustworthy?
Unfortunately, I've never had that problem. Information is always, as you mentioned earlier, two sources, and the information that I usually get, that's how I was taught. I always get it from one person and then get it from another individual. But in relation to keeping sources anonymous and whether or not there would be trust, that unfortunately or fortunately, we have the rules, and let's stick to the TTPS, where only the ACPs, DCPs, Commission himself could really talk, or divisional commanders are the only ones who are really allowed to speak to the media and give us information. Everybody else is technically not supposed to interact with us on that level to give us information. But these persons in rank, they don't always speak. Yeah, they don't assist.
But do we run the risk of when we speak to these younger officers that maybe they don't always know what's going on and maybe they're not as trustworthy?
You run that risk, and that is why there's always that need for two persons. And that's why I said I personally have an experience. I don't know if these gentlemen have, but there's always a story that breaks. Even for instance, the fire yesterday, it got information from one source, and then I had to go and verify it with another source because that's just the information fire that broke on Thursday. That's just the information that we have. You can't rely on only one person.
You can't.
I have a slightly different view on that. I think sometimes, yes, it's good that we have the division heads who are supposed to be briefed on these things, but sometimes the younger officers are the ones who are on the scene.
First responders.
They're the first responders,
They're
and
the ones who give you the heads up.
they have the better atmosphere. They can tell you exactly what happened.
When, where.
So you can't exactly write off the young officers, but then again, you also have to be careful because they are also, you know, they have their own agendas as well sometimes.
Right, and so when you have, so Chassis, you wanted to chime in?
No, well, I mean, the thing about it is that the perfect situation is where we get to the scene ourselves. Therefore, we don't have to run the risk of receiving information from someone who has an agenda. Our agenda is to get the news out to the public as quickly and as accurately as possible. That's what we're supposed to do at the end of the day. Not supposed to put our own spin on it or anything like that. The raw information, processed and sent out there.
But it's just final question. So when a police commissioner comes out and says that the reporting is irresponsible, does that necessarily mean that the reporting was wrong? And how should the public treat with our story versus the commissioner's reaction?
Trinidad's reading public and viewing public are a very, very fickle bunch. At the end of the day, I've been in this industry since the year of our Lord 1996, and I have seen one media house that has never fully recovered when it was thought that there was government interference in that particular media house. I'm not calling names here, Kijan. But that being said, Trinidad and Tobago wants to know that they can trust the newspaper that they read.
All right, thanks very much. Very spirited discussion. When we return, the topic of the week, do we really need a media association? We have a panel of former members of MAT joining us on set. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. So for the second time in as many years, the Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago has essentially crumbled. On Friday, February 13th, Black Friday, if you will, a domino effect of resignations left media personnel without representation. But do we even need it? So why do we need a media association? So to talk about that, we have former MAT Vice President and former Editor-in-Chief of the Trinidad Guardian, Judy Raymond, and former MAT floor member, Jabari Fraser. Welcome to you both. Judy, I know it's always ladies first, but I'm going to let Jabari start this one. Jabari, the question in sports terminology, what happened? What went wrong?
Well, I think the executive realized that it couldn't function simply because people weren't dedicated enough in a sense. There was not enough time. People didn't create enough time to meet and to see about the affairs of the executive and the general membership, essentially.
Judy, is that an issue that we're perennially going to have now? You have a group of people who never have time. The journalism takes up so much of your time, and we never have money either.
Unless there's some kind of revolution, yes. I mean, it was just a matter of time before the current executive basically admitted that, okay, it had dissolved, given up. There have been similar events a number of times over the past few executives because they just run out of steam. People just think, you know, why am I doing this? My efforts are not appreciated. You're battling against all kinds of odds all the time. I mean, do you know what MAT's resources consist of? They consist of a cardboard box.
I've heard that. So there's only...
I think we lost the cardboard box, though.
Yeah, it goes astray from time to time.
So we don't even have that. We don't even have that cardboard box. How do we even begin to get young journalists involved and say, you need this? This is something that we need to do.
I think the next executive, assuming anybody is brave or stupid enough to volunteer to be on another executive, they need to go out into newsrooms and explain to people what matters for, how it works, and the fact that when something happens, they shouldn't be sitting there and saying, okay, what is Matt doing about this? What is Matt saying about this? They should be thinking, what can I do to help Matt react appropriately, sufficiently powerfully, or whatever? What do I think Matt should be saying? Let me tell them, let me help them. What can I do? I mean, you get out of it what you put in, and if you're just sitting there waiting for Matt to do something for you, it's not going to happen.
Joyce, let me ask you that. Is that what you encountered when you were a member of MAT? Was it that there were people who were willing to do something, were people being shut down, were ideas being shut down? What was happening within the walls of this cardboard box, if that's your office, that people couldn't get anything off the ground?
What was happening? Essentially nothing. As I said, people didn't have the...
So there were lack of meetings? People
lack of
didn't want
meetings,
to meet, couldn't meet?
enthusiasm, you know, time, as I said, dedication, resources. And I think also an issue was that there weren't enough ideas coming forward. And, you know, the whole thing of journalists or media workers saying, you know, what can MAT do for me? I think was something that the executive can help to work on, because the executive needs to put it to the general membership that, listen, we need to advocate for press freedom, we need to help journalists network, we need to help media workers do X, Y, Z, we need to provide tools and training resources and make it a real professional association.
And you can't do that without money. So let me throw in a question. Everybody else goes to the government for money. Can MAT go to the government for money?
I don't think it can now, in the current climate in which absolutely everything is politicized. I mean, one of the executives I sat on, some of the members, for instance, went to pay a courtesy call on the Prime Minister because that person was the Prime Minister, and there were howls of protest about that. I don't see anything wrong with simply having a conversation with the Prime Minister, but they got into trouble just for that. They also got into trouble because they dared to criticize the same Prime Minister for doing something that affected journalists.
So you have an organization of journalists or of professionals who historically don't make money. So it's not to say that dues will be something that can sustain MAT. So, and anybody we go to and ask for money, essentially at some point we're going to have to report on. So where does this money come from? It's not going to rain from the sky.
Right now, it doesn't come from anywhere. I mean, one executive I sat on, we decided we needed help to get things going. Let's raise some funds. We set up various subcommittees to help raise funds. I think they had one meeting and that was the end of that.
Does it have to be something like a Kickstarter fund where you just get anonymous donations so you don't know where it's coming from?
That could be something that can work, but I think also that there are grants out there that are available. International bodies, regional bodies can provide funding for associations like MAT to have something to work on, whether it's to start up some small office space, even if it's a moving virtual office space or something to put resources in so that MAT can have something to work with.
And quickly, we have very short time. I just want to know, how do we even define the role of MAT? Should MAT be a sort of a media watchdog which can actually punish journalists in case they do something wrong?
No, how's that going to work? I mean, a lot of people imagine that MAT has some kind of regulatory powers already. It doesn't. It is a purely voluntary association of individual journalists. I don't know how many financial members it has right now, if any, but as you said, journalists get paid peanuts, so the dues are very low. You can't do anything with that.
And there's no way that they can advocate for higher salaries because it's not a union?
No, but I think MAT has a role to advocate for higher standards, or this is regarding the first question, higher standards, and they can definitely provide the tools to get to those higher standards through training, through workshops, through association with regional bodies, the Association of Caribbean Media Workers, international bodies, IFEX, and so on. So it's possible to advocate for higher standards.
And I think it's even possible to maybe some condemnation of ourselves if we do mess up. I think a lot of people want that sort of accountability on both ends.
But MAT isn't for standards.
We're going to leave it there. We're going to take a break and be right back with our story of the week. And that's how we end today's show. I want to thank all our guests, especially those who came out from other media houses to join the discussion. This was In Conclusion, and we'll be here every Saturday night from 7:30 p.m. I'm Keishan Haynes, and a brand new week of news begins right now.